Scott Johnson joins me to talk about Amazon jobs, original programming from Apple, and whether or not robots should pay taxes. Plus, you can now pay for your YouTube comments to get noticed. But should you? All that and a whole lot more coming up on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1682, recorded Thursday, January 12th, 2017. This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Blue Apron. Blue Apron will send you fresh, high-quality ingredients to cook delicious meals with simple step-by-step instructions right to your door. See what's on the menu this week and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/twit. And by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. When it comes to the big decision of choosing a mortgage lender, work with one who has your best interest in mind. Use Rocket Mortgage for a transparent, trustworthy home loan process that's completely online at quickenloans.com/TNT. Hello and welcome to Tech News Today. This is the show where we talk about everything you need to know about technology today. I'm Megan Maroney. Jason Howell is out today, but joining me from his home studio is Scott Johnson, founder of the Frog Pants Network. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Thank you for having me on. I always like being on with you, Megan. I came prepared to wear this ceremonial winter hat because we just received about a foot of snow, and I just moved it all. So I'm happy to be here post-snow removal in one piece. I didn't slip. I didn't die. And I'm here for you today.
That is all good. Did you move it into little cups to drink water later?
No, unlike your fine state of California, we really don't have a drought here. In fact, we get a lot of snow every year, and that rain you're having, that just sort of seems like the biggest rain you guys have had forever, is coming to our higher elevation and just turning into snow. So you guys are welcome to come get it anytime you want. It's here. There's piles of it. I'm not going anywhere. It's not a problem. It's free. You can come have it.
Okay. Well, does school get closed when it's snowy there, or are you guys just so used to it that it's...
Well, let me tell you. So I know that happens almost everywhere else where there's little snow. So when something like this happens, schools get, out and government buildings shut down and all sorts of things happen, but not here. In fact, my entire childhood, there was always this looming threat, or as I like to call it, treat, that there might be a snow day. And we would have some really gnarly snowstorms, like big time, 3 feet of snow, wake up in it. And yet somehow still, because we are rugged American individuals, we would somehow still make our way to school. And I was never happy about that. So the answer is no. My kids have never had a snow day. I never had a snow day. I'm not sure they exist. I think they're like unicorns.
Yeah, well, in California, we apparently aren't very rugged because sometimes the schools get closed when it rains too much. So
I can't even imagine that. But listen, I understand. You only can do with what you're used to. It totally makes sense. Put me in whatever. We get hot temperatures here too. So really nobody has any excuses. It gets to be 105 in the summer and it'll be 13 degrees tonight. So take that. We're tougher than we look, or something.
All right. Well, let's get to the tech news. Jeff Bezos says Amazon will hire 100,000 full-time workers with jobs at all skill levels, from engineering to factory building. A spokesperson for the company says the openings will be for employment across the United States, not just in Seattle or Silicon Valley. Amazon plans to fill the positions over the next 18 months, giving us a hint at the speed at which they plan to open physical stores, more warehouses, and build out their cloud computing business. And we assume that all of these jobs will go to real people and not to robots, but I'm not so sure. What do you think, Scott?
I think some of those will be robots. I mean, I think that there is an imperative at Amazon and everywhere else that are working hard to make machine learning something that they make a part of their business, to do things that are more robotic. So I don't buy the idea that this is a purely flesh and blood endeavor, but it is exciting to hear that they're doing so much expanding in this country, and it's nice to to know that they're also doing some pretty cool stuff elsewhere. I like the drone delivery testing they've been doing in the UK. Generally speaking, I feel like Amazon is one of the most interesting companies to watch right now. It's interesting to refer to them as a tech company too, whereas 5 years ago I wouldn't have called them a tech company, even as they were starting to step into a lot of those models. I mean, sure, they had they had Kindles and they were working on tablets and they had other plans going on 5 years ago. But now more than ever, maybe thanks to the Echo, I don't know, maybe primarily, but I feel like Amazon is poised to be a really interesting force in tech for many years to come. And the more expansion we see from them here, I think the better off we are as Americans anyway, because we'll get to kind of see that stuff up front and close. So, it's encouraging. These numbers are really good. I really like Amazon, except they sent me 2 of something last week and had a hard time doing the return. But that's a whole other issue.
Maybe they know better than you that you need 2 of that something.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, it's not like they double charged me, and it was fine. And there was just some confusion about sending it back. And, I think when we did send it back, they charged or they credited the amount of the item back to us, even though we wanted to pay for the first one. And we got essentially return money for a thing that was just an extra one. So now I'm working with them trying to actually pay them. And it turns out that's harder than you think. So it's just interesting because on the one hand, you could say, oh, it's so great seeing them expand in these new areas. And Bezos's interest in space exploration is really cool, and drones and all this stuff. But I do wonder sometimes, will their new focuses or the new branches that they're making on their big tree known as Amazon, is that going to hurt their core trunk of that business? Will they start to sort of fall apart in the fulfillment and retail space? They're nowhere near that now, but anecdotally, I've had a couple of weird things lately that make me wonder if their heads are a little high in the clouds right now.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to know who you're buying things from Amazon. I think I bought a pair of Nikes, and they just don't fit like the Nikes that I usually get. And I'm just wondering, was it Amazon fulfillment? Are these fake Nikes? I think they are kind of dropping the ball a little bit on where their products come from and what Amazon fulfillment is versus coming straight from Amazon, that sort of thing.
Well, I have one tiny anecdote from a trip to China I took a number of years ago, and I was able to visit 2 Nike factories. What freaked me out about that visit was, and I'd always had this theory at home because whenever I bought a pair of Nikes, left foot was a good fit, right foot not so much. And I just thought, well, I had some dumb foot thing. My foot is weird.
You're doing it wrong.
Right. I'd buy other brands and it would be fine. But it seemed like with Nike, it was always weird that way. So when I was in China, we went to these 2 factories and they took us on tours. And one of the factories does the left shoe and the other factory does all right shoes. They don't do both there. They pair them up later. So my theory is that there's something either occasionally or all the time where their processes are just slightly different enough to where when those shoes get paired, they're not exactly right. So it's entirely possible that that's what's going on. But Amazon, you're right. They'll say, hey, this is a great deal on this thing. Normal list price is this. Look at the discount you're getting. And then I'm like, yeah, but where's this actually coming from? And it's not Amazon. It's some mom and pop store, which is fine. But their fulfillment services are much more about get it where you can get it instead of, hey, we're America's warehouse with all of the products you'll ever need under the same roof. And more and more, you're seeing that diversity on Amazon, I think.
Well, let's move on. Move over. HBO, Netflix, and Amazon Studios. Apple plans to get into the original TV creation game. According to Wall Street Journal sources, Apple representatives have been looking to buy original content from Hollywood creators. The content might be available to people who pay the $10 a month Apple Music subscription fee. Apple's already started creating original content with its show Planet of the Apps, which is in production, and after the purchase of James Corden's Carpool Karaoke. But this appears to be something slightly different. It would be a service that, Stranger Things, you can only watch if you have Netflix. So it'd be certain movies or shows that you could watch only if you had Apple Music. Now, are you an Apple Music subscriber, Scott?
I am currently. I like it a lot. I switched from Spotify and before that RDO, mostly for the selection. I think their selection's pretty good. And it made sense for me, and the family plan's pretty cheap for up to 5 users, so we use that around here. So I really, really like it. The idea of tacking on additional content for that subscription is interesting to me. They've had, I don't know what their total number of users are now. I saw that number recently, and I don't remember what it was, but it showed pretty good growth. It's nowhere near the install base of something like Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, or even something as small or niche as CBS All Access or something. So while those numbers will probably continue to rise, for me, it feels more like the PlayStation effort they made a couple of years ago with PSN members getting access to original content there. And that didn't really go so well. That was a huge deal. Sony made a big splash about it. And that was the year they also announced PlayStation Vue, which has done pretty well and has branched out to other devices and been a pretty good service. I also have that service. But at the time, this original programming they were doing was supposed to be the end all be all, and it kind of fizzled out and nobody really cared. And I can't tell if it was because it was not great content, or if in the end, they just couldn't get the kind of audience big enough to care, or to make it's not a large enough audience to make a difference. So if you really want to take a swipe at the Netflixes and Amazons and Hulus of the world, you got to have something really special. I am surprised it's taken Apple this long to show a little bit of their hand in their desire to also have some hits. These other outlets we've talked about all have major reasons to subscribe to them, and that includes HBO Now, that includes Netflix, Amazon, and even Hulu. They've got original content that is really good, better than network television stuff. Makes me wonder why I ever liked network television. That stuff is so good. So that is not an easy egg to crack this late in the game, even though that's kind of Apple's MO to sort of come in late and take something that's already sort of been established and iterated on and then make it their own. I'm not sure this is it for them. So we'll see. I don't know. Does this predict the future of Apple having a giant media company and streaming all sorts of television and movie and original content? Maybe, but I think that's a big mountain to climb.
Yeah, I mean, it feels a little bit like this might be a desperation move for them. I mean, I don't want to read too much into it, but, we do know that iPad sales are going down, iPhone sales are going down, and they need something else. And they've talked about how subscriptions and services might be where they go. But we've also heard rumors that that the first time they went into Hollywood trying to create a service, they just said, here's how much we're going to pay you. And it wasn't as much as Hollywood is used to getting. And they did, they just came in like they thought they come in to create iTunes, and they thought that that Hollywood would be the same as the record producers, and they weren't, right? That's what we've heard, that they were just very full of themselves and people didn't want to work with them. So I don't know if maybe they're coming back in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also an egg and a chicken and egg thing. Like, they don't have a platform that everybody goes to for video content outside of iTunes. You can rent movies and rent TV shows or buy TV seasons and that sort of thing. And there's certainly a business model for them, and that's already happening. But as far as like a all-in-one streaming service a la Netflix, they don't have any of that groundwork. Like, there's no, hey, this is where I get a bunch of movies, and then they can add on original content and then improve those and then have new investment the next year and have 20 new shows. Like, they're not there. And I'm not sure this is one you can just sort of circumvent. I think they get away with it with Apple Music as a streaming service, moving from iTunes as a buyable song, 99-cent service, and then moving to a streaming service. I think they could make that jump because there's just some logic there. Like, that's not a huge leap. But going from zero to we have popular television shows people want to buy a service for, I think it takes a lot of like loyalty and seasons and testing and investment and shows that have multiple seasons behind them. Like, Netflix didn't do all this in 6 months. It's taken them a very long time, and they've blazed a really interesting trail, and a lot of others are sort of following in that wake, and that's great. But they're all having to put in their dues, and I'm not sure Apple's done that yet. So whatever they do now, we may not see the fruit of it for 5-6 years. And then the question is, do they have the determination to stick it through to the end?
Mm-hmm. It also feels like, in a way, they might have had some deals that were in the works just by the fact that they had been promoting and obviously working on the TV app, which was nothing. Essentially, like the TV app that came, that they just released in the latest update, was basically like you open it up and maybe the stuff that you've bought on iTunes is there, and maybe you can connect to HBO if you're a subscriber to HBO Go, and maybe you can connect to Hulu or Showtime, but Netflix isn't there, and I don't even think Amazon is there. It might be, but it's it's not. It's less than good. And it almost feels like they were creating that app for a long time. Maybe they thought they were going to have had these deals in the works by the time it released, and they just like, well, we don't have them, so let's just give them this.
Well, Apple's strategy of controlling the ecosystem the best they can and making it their own and making it part of their platform has served them well over the years, in lots of ways. But with television and TV and movies and stuff, I feel like the systems that be, they're all sort of skittish. They saw how the music stuff went. They saw the deals that were struck with Apple early in the iTunes days. And while that gave a clear path away from piracy and Napster and that sort of thing to something legitimate, it didn't exactly give them the deals that they ultimately would want. They felt like they got kind of shafted on that stuff. So I think they're just a little skittish about it. And I don't expect Apple's changed their philosophy too much about wanting to control the ecosystem the best that they can. And I don't really blame them for that. That's their business model. It's part of what they do. So for them to relinquish control is a big deal. And I don't think they're willing to. And I don't think the Hollywood system is willing to either. And a very good example of this, you just mentioned it, the Amazon Prime app, the Video Prime app, is not available on Apple TV. They have never been able to strike a deal, despite it being on iPads and phones and everything else. They've never been able to get a deal with Apple that was sufficient enough and not some weird 70-30 split or whatever it takes to get Apple the way they want it structured. Amazon just refuses to play ball. And you can be mad at Amazon, you can be mad at Apple, but these are the ways these guys plant their flags. So the real question is, who blinks? And I have a feeling in the next few years, just given the way things are going, Apple is going to need to blink a little. I think it's them that's going to have to give up some ground and not so much the content creators this time around, because I don't know that they have the same power now that they had with music in the early aughts.
That's true. Well, if you pre-ordered the throw-and-go Lily Robotics personal drone, I've got some bad news for you. It's been delayed forever. After $34 million in pre-orders, Lily is shutting down, saying they don't have the funds to produce the drone. In a blog post on their site, Lily said even with 60,000 orders, they still had not raised enough money to secure the manufacturing line and ship the product. Those who ordered the selfie drone will get refunds. Now, did you ever think this was going to be a real thing, the Lily drone, Scott?
I did. I just didn't think it'd end up being as cool as they said it would be. I mean, it's... the way they were marketing it, the way at least I was reading the marketing was, hey, you want a camera to follow you around so you can have the best possible angles and shots and aerials for your Instagram page or whatever. I just don't know that that's that compelling. The people that would really care about having that follow them around are sports aficionados and people with very sort of specific selective use cases. And maybe that's more than 60,000 people, but for whatever reason, that message didn't resonate with enough of them to get past that. So I think it looked neat. I like the idea of just chucking it and having it follow me around, but I also don't think it was going to work right every time. I don't know. There's just something about this that felt a little vaporware, and I'm sad to see it go, but I'm glad people are getting their money back.
Yeah, I mean, 3 years ago when they started, they called it a flying camera. Like, that sounded like futuristic. But now, at this point, 3 years later, there are a lot of drones that are really easy to use, a lot easier than they were 3 years ago. And GoPro isn't even doing very well. They're doing quite poorly. I think people just, that era of really, knowing that there'll be a wider audience for a camera that would follow you around while you were skiing or snowboarding. That's just, that audience isn't big enough, I think, to really...
There's also just I feel like we're running into these soft caps of what the market is willing to bear at any given time, and then it takes more time than that and more money than that to see it through. You see this with things like 3D printers. They were just all the rage and still are. They're still pretty amazing. They're making great inroads, but they get to a place and they sort of crest a little bit, and then everyone's like, oh no, they're not. It's not still selling like crazy. VR is experiencing this right now. After a year of hype, we're now at sort of a leveled off period of sales. People are either waiting for what's next or deciding that what's out there now is too expensive or too encumbering or whatever. A lot of questions about whether mobile is better for that solution, whether AR is better than VR, or a combination of mixed reality is better. So there's all these things that happen with these technologies. I'm always reminded of the early 2000s and Microsoft's effort to make tablets. And those were pretty cool, but they were thick. They had loud fans. They were basically notebooks with touch capability and pretty clunky, but they had it right in terms of, one day this is going to be a thing. And then it took Apple later to figure out how to make that thing mass market, and they did. Well, now we're hitting another cap on that, and nobody's quite sure how to take that to wherever it needs to go next. So this stuff happens, but if you're a small company doing Kickstarters or whatever for your idea, and the interest has waned a little bit in drones, I don't know what to tell them. It's just like, this is the way these markets work. I think there's going to be a day where you and I can walk into a Target or a Walmart, pick up a relatively inexpensive drone that will do everything they're claiming this one will do and more. that's just going to be the way it'll be. But we're just not there. And you have to be able to either withstand those peaks and valleys, or you innovate now, fall by the wayside, and somebody else picks up the pieces later and goes mass market with it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as Mike pointed out in the chat room, there's a lot of drones out there, quadcopters out there that already have follow me mode. I guess some DJI drones, and so it exists. It's like what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I always think about the Microsoft tablets or the Windows CE phone. I don't know if you remember that. Like that was also the late 90s, where it was like you just had all of Windows on a phone, and nobody, everyone was like, eh. And then when Apple came out with the iPhone, it's like, this is revolutionary. And yeah, Microsoft had done it years before, but it just wasn't as pretty, I guess.
It's even search engines. You can only go so far with a search engine. And then you go, okay, well, I guess this is our business. And then Google comes along in the late 90s and says, no, we can do a whole lot more. And then they just completely change the landscape. Mm-hmm. So this stuff happens every time. It's like you can predict it, but the companies involved are bleeding money. So I totally get why they either don't stick around or why they're considered, beta and alpha, and somebody else has to come out with the mainline product. So this isn't all that shocking, but I am sad to see it go. I know a lot of people had their hearts set on their Lily.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of bleeding, perhaps in a response to the first season of Westworld, the European Parliament released a draft report proposing a kill switch for robots to limit the amount of damage they do when they turn on us. The proposal on robot governance includes general principles about what to do when or if robots become self-aware, including liability issues, a classification system for the registration of advanced robots. Now, what do you make of a set of ethical principles for robots, Scott?
I mean, the closer we get to, modern AI, or we start realizing our science fiction ideas of what AI can do, the more skittish humans become about what that means. And without taking it too far in that direction, I think it's probably a good idea. Like if you have a machine in a factory that is pumping out a bunch of aluminum cans or something, those have safety off features and functions, so that if something goes bad, somebody's sleeve gets caught in there and a sensor sees it, the entire system shuts down. This is true of a lot of power tools now. It's not anything new to the way we deal with our machinery. It's just that we're getting to the point where we can start having robots do a lot of things that are sort of dangerous. But like even on like assembly lines for cars, those big swinging arms that are all robotic, they have safety stuff in there. So that if one of those goes nuts and they completely lose it and just start swinging around and slapping everybody, they're going to shut that stuff down. So I'm all for it. It's just really hard to avoid the science fiction side of me that wants to go, oh, we're getting closer to when the robots take over and we can just push a button and have them all stop moving or whatever. Very Westworld, but I think this is something we already do, and it makes sense as this gets more advanced that we do that there too.
Mm-hmm. Well, Burke, if we could take the Burke cam, he has a little note for us. He loves robots and works with a lot of. He says a sleep switch would be better rather than a kill switch. Just put him to sleep. Just rest.
That's a good point. If we're talking about literally killing the robot, like stopping it from existing ever again, bricking it essentially. That is a different conversation. A sleep switch or an off switch or whatever, that makes more sense. And I can't imagine them doing more than that. You're talking about potentially robotics that are millions of dollars of investment and product and whatever. You can't just kill it and brick it and bring another one in. It would have to just be able to shut it down. We need the ability to go stop and have it stop. Mm-hmm. That I'm totally with. But let's not brick it, any more than if my phone starts freaking out, I should be able to just reboot it, not have it die.
Well,
so
I don't want to go too far into semantics, but I think, a kill switch, like that's just a term for turning off a machine, right? But like proposing a sleep switch, that's already that's already considering like that we don't want to say we're going to kill the robot. We don't, we're just going to put it to sleep. So, I mean, I think that's as robots become, not just the things that are driving us around, but, care robots, that's going to be a big deal. People taking care of, jobs that people don't really want. And at some point that maybe when we are, hopefully our families will take care of us, Scott. I mean, we've done a lot for them, but it might be a robot. It might be a robot that's with us in our last days, like doing all the things, because maybe we don't want our kids to take care of us in those times. So, does having, it would be good to humanize these robots that might be who we are spending our last days with.
That's true. But if I've got a robot changing out my IV when I'm 85 and its name is Larry the robot, and he's a real sweet guy, and I can talk to him and say, "Oh, Larry, what'd you do today?" And Larry says, "Well, sir, I blah, blah, blah." And he's very conversational and has adopted some AI routines that make him seem very human to me. This is all wonderful. I love the idea of this. But if he is doing my IV one day and he yanks it out and just starts stabbing me with it over and over and over because he's hit some kind of loop and he's glitching out, I want to be able to go, Larry off or something.
Mm-hmm.
And have Larry stop stabbing me with a needle. So that's my thinking, I'm all about this idea of this humanization of them. I want a robot caretaker when I'm older. I'm all in on this, but I just need it not to freak out and stab me with a needle.
Right, because what if Larry is also in charge of your finances and all of your family's finances, and Larry says, you know what, he's 85. He lived a good life. It's really expensive to take care of Scott at this point. I think stabbing him with a needle until he dies is better for everyone.
Right. And I need a kill switch for that. That's nice. Also, I'm not putting now that now you've gone into the financial world, I do not want Larry in charge of my finances.
Okay, good. Poor Larry. Well, Pandora is laying off 7% of employees, according to a letter to shareholders by CEO Tim Westergren. He also said they did exceeded growth due in large part to lucrative advertising deals. Pandora still plans to release its $10 a month streaming service later this quarter. And they were 7% up in trading because I guess people like it. Investors like it when you lay people off and you also beat earnings. But sad for those people getting laid off.
That makes sense because the employees are a bit, sometimes your biggest expense. I don't know what 7% of what though is what I want to know. Like how many people work at Pandora. My feeling with tech companies and service companies like this is they probably almost across the board, and this is just me playing in the sky with no actual facts, okay? But I just have this idea that most of them hire more than they need. It keeps them fresh and innovative, and they can do new things and try new things because they're loaded with lots of smart people, but they're not running lean by any means. So when I hear about this, I think, well, this is probably one of those cases. That 7% was probably never needed or not needed since their biggest jumps in growth. So this is just trimming some fat. I hate to say it that way because I feel bad for anybody who lost their jobs, but man, them's the breaks. Like if you want to have shareholders be happy, sometimes the way to do it is to cut that fat and show a profit anyway. And I could see why they would be happy. From purely a number standpoint, why they'd be happy. From a human standpoint, it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
But I like Pandora. They're cool. They play on my Echo all day. I like Frank Sinatra, so they play me a nice little radio station, and I'm happy.
But are you going to sign up for their $10 a month streaming service that's exactly like Apple Music?
Maybe. Selection's a big deal for me. I do like the idea that, Pandora's a much more platform agnostic kind of product than Apple Music is. So I like the idea of integration with devices and sort of Internet of Things, sort of music integration and that sort of stuff. So maybe, but this is one of those things that needs to simmer for a little while before I jump in. I got to hear how people are liking it. And maybe I'll go for it. But I like that they have a plan. I like that Pandora is not another one of these early companies who you see die off because someone's doing it better with more money now. We were talking a bit about that earlier, but I'm glad they're not the Diamond Rio of the iPod world. I'm glad they're not the leftover thing that they didn't quite make it, the Netscapes of the world while, Explorer took him over. It's like that depresses me in tech whenever that happens because I feel like innovators get shoved to the side. So I like that Pandora's found a place. And if they're being profitable right now and they've got a cut to make that continue to happen, I don't know that this is totally a negative thing. I think this is probably a good news for them and good news for Pandora fans.
Well, after the break, you can now pay your favorite YouTuber, pay for their attention, in fact. We'll explain how and why, but first let's take a minute to thank Blue Apron, the sponsor of this episode. Blue Apron is the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. Their mission is to make incredible home cooking accessible to everyone, while at the same time supporting a more sustainable food system, setting the highest standards for ingredients, and building a community of home chefs. Blue Apron delivers seasonal recipes along with fresh, high-quality ingredients to make delicious home-cooked meals. Every meal you get comes with a step-by-step, easy-to-follow recipe card and pre-portioned ingredients that can be prepared in 40 minutes or sometimes even less. Save time and save money. If you shop at the grocery store, especially with some of the high-end grocery stores, you're going to spend a lot more money. But with Blue Apron, you can now spend under $10 per person, and that's for healthy meals that you cook at home. You can customize your recipes every week based on your dietary preferences. So if you're gluten-free, if you only eat fish, if you only eat vegetables, you can specify based on your preferences. And then you choose a delivery option that fits your needs. There's no weekly commitment, so you only get deliveries when you want them. Blue Apron now delivers to 99% of the continental U.S. They set the highest quality standards for their community of over 150 local farms, fisheries, and ranchers across the United States. Blue Apron not only supports a more sustainable food system, it supports happy and healthy families. Cooking together builds strong family bonds, and research shows that Blue Apron families cook nearly 3 times more often. New recipes are created every week by Blue Apron's culinary team, and then they're not repeated within a year. So you get some really creative meals that you can make at home, like spicy shrimp and Korean rice cakes with cabbage and garlic piccata with scallion rice, and chipotle pepper enchiladas with lime sour cream. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/twit. That's blueapron.com/twit. Don't forget to add the twit so they know that we sent you. And we thank Blue Apron for their support of Tech News Today. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. Today, YouTube announced that you can now pay to get your comments seen on your favorite live streaming YouTuber. Super Chat, that's what it's called. It's a new tool that lets you pin your comment to the top of a live stream for a price. So if you want a 350-character message to stay up for 5 hours, that will cost you a mere $500. But if your YouTuber ends the live stream and starts another, your comment that you paid $500 for does not transfer to the new stream. Super Chats are non-refundable. What do you think of this way for creators to make money, Scott?
I'm pro creators finding new ways to make money or to sustain themselves and create more content. I think that is always a good thing. This strikes me as a little odd. Yeah, I don't want to. This is me. I'm gonna have a disclaimer here. I don't want to judge this too harshly. However, somebody who would pay what amounts to $100 an hour for 5 hours to have their comment up top, I don't know if I ever want to meet them in person. I mean, it feels just a little extreme to me. And so I'm going to try to take that out of the equation for a second and just look at the sort of, the dollars and cents of this. It is true that you're seeing this kind of happen across the board. The cheer system that they now have over at Twitch is kind of interesting, where you can, buy these bits and essentially create cheers while people are streaming, and that costs money as well. Of course, subbing to channels has been a thing that Twitch has been doing for a long time. They've been very much experimenting with ways to monetize channels and help creators, do well that way. But I don't know. I feel like we're in experiment mode big time, and this one is very experimental to me. So the idea of paying for a comment so that somebody sees it, I just worry that it feeds into a certain part of internet fan culture that can border on the obsessive. And I don't know that feeding that is a good idea in the long run. So it's hard for me to take the psychology out of it. But hey, on the other hand, if people are willing to pay the money, then why the heck not? Usually it's a numbers game. If you have enough people there for your live streams, or you have enough people commenting on your videos because you're a big enough YouTuber or whatever, you're playing a game with averages where somebody somewhere is going to give you $500 for 5 hours of exposure, and I guess more power to you. But for whatever reason, this specifically feels a little bit odd to me. It's a little like, I guess it's not that different than saying, well, I want better seats at a concert, so or let's say a sports thing, I'm going to pay extra money so I can be in a box seat where I've got people bringing us food all day and I've got perfect shot of the entire arena or whatever. Is that much different than this? Probably not. It's just that this one just feels like you're all up in my personal space. So I don't know. I keep going back to that, saying I don't want to go back to that, but I feel like you can't have the conversation without at least mentioning that this feels just a little on the creeper side to me.
So you have a Twitch channel, a Frog Pants Twitch channel, frogpants.com/Twitch. How does the cheer system work there?
Well, so this is fun because I've used Twitch for a long time for game streaming and stuff like that, but I'm really going for it at the moment for a couple of reasons. One, a week or two ago, Twitch came out, made an announcement that, hey, we are bringing, I mean, these weren't their words, but we're essentially bringing the Justin TV back into the fold. In other words, if you do something that is not gaming related, whether it be like I do a lot of podcasts all day, or more recently or somewhat recently, they started adding creative back, which meant if you were drawing things or creating or building things, game related or not, you could do streams of those and not be kicked off the service. Because for the longest time, it was games only. That's all you're going to get to do. So don't do anything else. And if you do, we'll ban your channel. With them opening that up, it made perfect sense for me to just sort of go all in, because I'm doing a mix of all three of those things. I'm creating art and illustration work all the time. Getting to stream that is a whole lot of fun, and doing collaborations with other artists live is really fun. Game streaming, of course, is something I already did and loved doing. And then I've got a huge slew of podcasts that I'm constantly doing where they're not necessarily in the topic of gaming. So it was nice to bring that all back into the fold. What I didn't expect is right away, they gave me partnership, which is this program where people can now subscribe to your channel. And many of them just give the free $4.99 sub they get with their Prime membership to it, now that Amazon's done that thing with Twitch. A whole different story, but that's a way to monetize the channel. The way this cheering system works, to get back to your original question, I don't actually know yet. I know that it exists in there, and I know what people can do is go spend some sort of space money, real money basically, but they can kind of convert it over to these bits or whatever. And then people in the chat can like cheer for you and something cool happens that they liked or whatever. And it costs them money to be able to do those. To me, it would be like, it's a good example. Imagine if you're at a football game and every time you you yelled "Go Team," that was going to cost you a microtransaction to yell that. And it might look really good and be animated and all that stuff, but it's a little thing that you paid for. That I feel like is a model I can get my head around more, because this is sort of a thing you can build up and have sort of a reserve of. It's like your little ammunition there. And you might think, man, I've enjoyed this stream so much, I am totally going to put one of these cheers up here and, way to go. And then everybody makes a little bit of money. I don't think, and I could be wrong about this, again, because I'm kind of new to the whole cheer thing, but I don't think the creators get a cut of the cheer stuff. I think that might just be Twitch. But like I said, they're all experimenting with weird ideas on how to monetize this brave new world of live streaming content. And they're getting into mobile streaming. And if you combine that with everybody else doing their stuff with Facebook Live and Periscope and everyone else, you're going to see I think for the next couple of years, you're going to see everybody trying to narrow down how can money be made in this process that isn't just pre-roll ads. And I am super excited to see how it all pans out in the end. But yeah, Twitch, YouTube Gaming, and others, they're going to be the main places you're going to see this kind of experimentation. But $500 for a comment for 5 hours? No thanks.
Well, I mean, you can also just pay $1 so that your name changes color. So it's like a different color than everybody else in the live stream. You can have that. It's not, $500 was the highest. 5 hours is the longest you can go. But yeah, I mean, I've heard people comparing this to a tip jar, which I think is a faulty comparison, because, if I'm tipping a musician on the street, that doesn't give me permission to, shout in his ear for 5 hours, or just have, what I'm saying, have him like look me in the eye and hear what I'm saying and have everyone else hear what I'm saying. Same with if I'm tipping someone, who's waiting tables. Like, it's the same thing. It's like, hey, I'm tipping you because I think you're doing a good job, not because I'm demanding something from you, which is what this is.
I mean, I think what we're doing is we're learning that there are new social norms and mores in this new stuff. Like, there's just no way of getting around it. It's easy for me to want to apply traditional thinking to this, like tip jars or whatever you want to compare it to. And then you just realize, well, there are just too many things that are different about it. There are thousands of people in a live stream. Like right now, there's somebody playing an old Sonic game, and how's it go? Whatever it is, I forget the name of it. But they do this games done quickly series on Twitch every year, and they play these old games, and people tune into the 150,000 live chat room audience size. It's crazy. And the chat room's just just flipping past at a million miles an hour. And it's not even really a thing you can pay attention to or watch. But that's not the same as me and you at a music festival and stopping by somebody's booth who's playing acoustic music on a guitar. It doesn't have the same capacity. It doesn't have this idea of how are you going to filter through 180,000 people at once. Like, it's just new rules, new time, new place. And that's still being decided. And much of it is being decided by the communities themselves. So when you go to Twitch and you go to a channel and you see how people are behaving and what some of those norms are, that's stuff that the community has helped build and then solidify and now is the norm. They are the expectations. It's kind of like if you go to a restaurant in the States, you're weird if you don't tip. If you go to a restaurant in France, they think you're weird for tipping. But there's a good example. We're looking at somebody playing right now in Rocket League, and these kind of games and some of these Twitch guys and some of these guys on YouTube Gaming are so big. They're enormously popular people, and they get people in there by the hundreds, the thousands, sometimes the hundreds of thousands. So what are you to do with that? Mm-hmm. Well, you have to figure it out. It's a weird new place. This has never existed in the technological history of mankind. This is brand new, man. And even though it's been going on for the last few years, it's been very fledgling. It's about to go bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's not going to stop. And pretty soon, all the big media brands get involved, and before you know it, everybody's involved in everything. And then we're going to have a mainstream world that learned whatever lessons we're learning right now. So that's the attitude I have to take about it, because otherwise, it doesn't matter where you're at in your career, what age you are. Something changes this drastically, and you're like, well, this isn't how it's supposed to be. This is how it used to be in my day. And you can't, because it's new rules, new time, new place, and we're just going to have to sort of go with it. But I really enjoyed it so far. Like, my efforts on Twitch have tripled since they made that announcement, and I'm seeing audiences double, in some cases more, live audiences. I've seen the podcast feed get more downloads because of it. I've seen way more participation from people and interaction. Like, there's a realness to this that cannot be denied. The question is, how does it get paid for, and how weird are we willing to get?
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate your honesty about it, because, I mean, we really do come at this at the two very different ways. I mean, we are ad supported, and I work for a company. I work for Leo, and, you work for yourself. You have your own network. You went out there, you created it. You have Patreon, you have Twitch, you have YouTube, and, that's the way you're doing it, which is different. And same with Tom Merritt. I mean, I love what you guys are doing with Patreon. It's never felt like what I wanted to do. And this is, I hope that everyone doesn't think I'm a crazy feminist for bringing this up, but it is something when I ever come up on the topic of Patreon. I do feel like it is very different for a man to have a Patreon for his creation than it is for a woman. And do you agree with me, or what do you think about that?
That's interesting. I am fully aware that sometimes, like, this goes back to my comic strip, which people can find at myextralife.com. I'm not trying to promote it here or anything, but it goes to your point. I'll go months and months and months, comic a week, every week, dealing with various issues. And someone will point out to me, Scott, there's not a single lady in any of the comics you've done for the last 6 months. And there are no people of color. They're just all kind of lumpy, fat white guys. And I look at it and go, oh, yeah, they kind of are, right? So I think sometimes we just don't see it, we don't see the forest for the trees sort of thing. But I could totally see that. But I think it's across the board. I don't think it's just Patreon. I think women in YouTube have a harder time. I think women in Twitch have a harder time. There's a certain aspect of the audience that comes out of the woodwork that is there purely to harass that I just don't see. They don't come to my channel. They're going to channels where they feel like they can do that for whatever their motivations are. They may be 13. I don't know. These are all questions we can't answer. But absolutely, there is a divide there. The hard part is guys like me recognizing it when it's happening, because you just don't know, because we don't see it, right? So I'll go along and just think, here I am in my little bubble of who I know and how I know them, and it's all great and well and everything. But if I was some young upstart, female gamer trying to get on Twitch and trying to make a difference, I'm guessing she's going to get way more resistance than I am. I think that's just the truth of it. And I don't know, we're not going to solve that problem here on the show, obviously, but I think it helps to recognize it. It helps to acknowledge it, and certainly helps to, especially for those of us who it's easy for me to say, right? It's easy for me to say, oh, it's fine. No one's really that weird on Twitter, but I'll just block them if they're being weird anyway. It's not quite the same for my daughters or my female friends, or maybe even you, So I totally get that, and I think I agree with you there, especially when it comes to this kind of exposure. We're really putting ourselves out there in 2017 in a way that we've never done in human history. We're putting a camera on us. It's locked on us. It's holding us there. We're talking about personal things. We're scratching our noses. We're don't care what the lighting is. Our hair's a mess. Like we're really as intimate as we've ever been as a society, and we're sending that out in some cases to hundreds of thousands of people simultaneously. That has all sorts of repercussions that we probably don't even understand. And I find it fascinating at the same time as I find it kind of troubling. But I don't know. I feel like history is a rising road. This stuff always ends up in an optimistic place, in my opinion. And we're just kind of going through that weird time where we're not sure if someone will pay $500 for 5 hours. We don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think whenever you enter the idea of paying for someone's attention, I think it's worth it to think about, like, what does that mean for a man versus what does it mean for a woman? And Kevin, our editor, was saying, he has friends who do YouTube gaming, and there's already a money. There's like, he has a friend who will get a donation. Like there's someone who paid him a certain, like $2,000 or something to play a character with this color clothes. And, so it already happens. You're right. It's created by the community. But it's,
sure.
Yeah, it is interesting.
It's like anything. It's fraught with peril. It's a thing that has to be navigated. But I don't know. Like, what's going to happen today, Megan? Here's what's going to happen today. You and I just had an extremely reasonable back and forth about an issue that's really complex and nuanced, and we could probably have an entire show dedicated to it. Real issues to discuss and think about and empathize with and all this stuff. But you're going to probably get some emails from people saying, I love that conversation. That was great. You should have more of these. I'm so glad Scott talked about what he said, and I'm so glad Megan brought it up. And you're going to get those. And you're going to get a whole bunch of other emails from people saying, I can't believe you brought up some feminist agenda on the show today or something like that. Like, that's a possibility. I'm not saying it will, but it's very possible. And we just have to get through it. Like, at some point, reasonable conversation will win out. And I love these issues because they enlighten me. They put me in places I hadn't thought about. I can create. I have empathy for things I hadn't thought about before. People can see things from my perspective. So, like, we're doing Zeus's work here. It's a good thing to have these conversations, to talk about it, especially when facing a brave new future of media consumption that involves this kind of stuff. And absolutely, those conversations are important to have in a world of anonymous internet users who may or may not be there because they have your best interests at heart. So I'd be really curious what kind of feedback you get. I hope it's mostly positive.
I hope so too. But yeah, I mean, one more thing on this. I think that you, when I was thinking about what you do versus what someone, a lot of YouTubers do, is you have actual creations, like physical creations. You're an artist. You have comics. You sell things with your art on them. So I think that's a little different. Like there's, you're used to exchanging money for something that you've created. You have books, that sort of thing. So I think coming up at it that way is different. When you have someone who's just like, I'm a YouTube celebrity and I do nothing, I think it's a little different, and people just want their attention, and you wonder why.
Yeah, those are valid questions. I mean, there are people who have a YouTube following or a Twitch following or some sort of, Instagram following or whatever it may be, Snapchat, who are getting it purely because they're celebrities. So their exchange rate is, I made a movie, or I'm on a TV show, or I'm popular for whatever the reason is, and you're here for this extra bit of thing about my life, and that's the exchange. That exchange is an odd one. There's not a lot of back and forth. It's really just, you're an attractive person for whatever reasons you're attractive to me, and I get to come kind of be a little voyeuristic and see another part of your life. In the case of me and lots of people like me, my friend Bill Duran, who does Punished Props, many others who are making, in some cases, physical goods, sometimes digital goods, but are making products, really. And I think even podcasts can be considered that. Those are a different level of exchange rate. So now the relationship we have with your listeners or viewers, they are getting, in some cases, hard goods in exchange for this kind of personal exposure, but also, they're paying money for work they're getting. And it's definitely different, but this just helps illustrate how nuanced this is. There is no such thing as, there's no black and white way to look at this. And every YouTuber and every popular Twitch streamer and every popular whoever, they're all going to have these caveats, these differences, these nuances. And I think it's important to remember that none of these are the same. So we haven't probably helped anybody today, but I can tell you that sometimes acknowledging the complexity of things is a really, really good first step for me anyway. I'll speak for myself. That really helps me to be able to sort of navigate that path better. And, we've at least done that.
Mm-hmm. And go to twitch.tv/frogpants to see more of Scott. I think you might have helped someone.
Maybe.
A viewer from Florida who did not say his name sent us the following voicemail about how there are people out there who still get Netflix DVDs delivered to their house. Let's listen.
Yeah, Jason and Megan, this is regards to 1680 show that you were talking about, that you didn't think there was that many Netflix mailings out anymore. I work over in Tampa, post office in Tampa, Florida. And I see on an average anywhere from 90 to maybe 130,000 Netflix DVDs being returned almost daily. So there's still quite a few people that are doing old school instead of streaming. Love the show. Enjoy the two of you together. And Megan, maybe after the Pixel, you might decide to get rid of that iPhone and come to the Android world. Thanks for the great show, and I'll be listening to you.
So do you get Netflix DVDs in the mail?
Yeah, by the way, I love my Android friends too, and you're awesome because I love they've always got something like that to say about Android. Yeah, I mean, I don't get the discs anymore, and I always wondered, how's that going for Netflix? But I even think his anecdotal evidence shows how small it is. That's not that many. Mm-hmm. Like that's a low number. If you look at the total sort of installation base, or lack of a better term, for Netflix as a streaming service. So while it's clearly a legacy business that they will hold on to, that's not small money. It feels a bit like AOL when dial-up started taking a dive. I mean, you can still subscribe today to AOL dial-up service if you'd like to. To say that those numbers are anything remotely like what they used to be would be an out-and-out lie. So this isn't to refute what he's saying. Clearly, there are enough people doing it, or else Netflix would just straight up stop doing it. But I don't think it's anywhere near their streaming business. I don't think it can be.
Yeah, true. And yeah, he brought up the Pixel because I have for a month. I am using Jason's Pixel and he's using my iPhone 7, just as a sort of thought experiment / torture. It's been interesting.
He's been weirdly positive on Twitter about his iPhone experience, which did not expect from Jason Howell. I know him enough to know his Android lines run deep, and to hear him say things, I think I kind of like how I'm navigating this thing. I think I'm getting into this and starting, saying these positive things has been really interesting. But look at you guys with the world's weirdest exchange program. I think that's great.
Yeah, well, he is an optimist, but also he's wearing the Apple Watch, and I'm not sure that there's not like that little green light that, tells what your heart rate is. It might be shooting things straight into his skin, making him, just become someone who says good things about iOS. I can't refute that.
Wow. I wonder what I have a what do you call it? A Fitbit that does the same thing with the green light. I wonder what it's telling me.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I'm wearing a Fitbit too, and what it's telling me is that it's using 33% of the Pixel's battery. It ran my whole battery out, so I must be doing something wrong that I need to mess with the settings, because that doesn't seem right.
That seems wrong.
No, yes. After the break, as if Vegas weren't dangerous enough, soon it will be home to some of the first testing of autonomous shuttle buses. We'll discuss that in a minute. But first, let's take a minute to thank Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans, the sponsor of this episode. Getting a mortgage can be frustrating and time-consuming. It is the worst part about getting a new house or about refinancing the house you have. Those are both exciting things. The mortgage part is boring. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's hard and it's confusing, and you want someone to help you with it. And when it comes to this big of a decision, choosing a mortgage lender, it's important to work with someone who you trust and who has your best interests in mind. With Rocket Mortgage, you'll get a transparent online process that gives you the confidence to make an informed decision. Don't waste time searching through stacks of paperwork. With Rocket Mortgage, you can securely share your financial information to get a mortgage approval in just minutes. You can even adjust the rate and the length of your loan, and you can do all of that in real time to make sure you get the mortgage solution that's exactly right for you. Whether you're looking to buy a home or refinancing your existing mortgage, you can lift the burden of getting a home loan with Rocket Mortgage. Skip the bank, skip the waiting, go completely online. If you're watching this, I know that you like the idea of going completely online. Go to quickenloans.com/TNT. That's quickenloans.com/TNT. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS consumeraccess.org, number 3030. And we thank Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans for their support. TNT's fan of the day is Vorlago Design Technique, who says that he watches Tech News Today after a full day in the crime lab. Thank you, Vorlago. So that's interesting. It's like CSI.
Yeah, geez.
Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup. Post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook. You just use the hashtag #HowIWatchTNT. We will not ask you to pay to be on this show. Just use that hashtag. It's free, and we'll find it. French startup Navia is testing shuttles in Vegas this week without drivers. The autonomous shuttles are electric and free to the public until January 20th. Their creator says they'll be fully operational by this summer or late fall. For now, they'll be running down Fremont Street between Las Vegas Boulevard and 8th Street if you like to gamble with your life.
Wait, how long are they going to run those? When are they going to stop?
The 20th of January.
Shoot. I'm going to go to Vegas. I'm in Vegas. And, I'm not there till April. I want to try one of those. Like, for real. I want to get inside of that little thing and see what's up. Doesn't look like it's it looks like terrible things could happen in there. There's no clear windows. It's all ads on the outside.
Right. I mean, that is, terrible things could. I hadn't thought about what a driver does in terms of keeping people safe, not just by using the steering wheel. Yeah, we would hope that our robots had ethics if they were driving the car. Yeah, so it can fit 12 people, and it's 12 passengers. It can go 27 miles an hour, but for this test, it's going to go only 12 miles an hour. This same shuttle was tested at University of Michigan without incident.
You're not going to get nothing can drive between Fremont and Las Vegas Boulevard much faster than that anyway. So that's probably a good place to test this.
Yeah, I'm all for more autonomous cars. So sure. It's always funny to me when they're free at first, like because we're testing and, it's free and you have to sign this 12-page release before you get on.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, plus it's just they say 12 people. It feels smaller than that. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong photos, but it seems like that's a cramped 12 people and in a hot Vegas summer strip. That is not where I want to be. Unless it's well air conditioned, I guess.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Scott Johnson. Go to his Twitch channel. Go to frogpantspot.net. Subscribe to all of his podcasts. You can see all that at frogpants. Is it .net or .com?
.com. Frogpants.com.
Frogpants.com.
Yep. All kinds of cool shows going on, all kinds of rad stuff happening. If they follow me on Twitter, they'll hear all the latest as well. I'm at Scott Johnson over there. And Megan, I love being on the show. Thanks for having me again.
Oh, so are you excited about the Nintendo Switch announcement today?
I am. Tonight, 8 p.m. Pacific, we're going to find out what's up. I'm actually very bullish on that thing and feel like Nintendo needs a win in the hardware category. I feel like this is their chance to get back to what makes them great and stops being so gimmicky, despite the fact that it's a little gimmicky. But it's still kind of back to their core, what their core business is about. So yeah, I for one am really jazzed about what Nintendo shows today. I'm probably going to be slightly disappointed because they tend not to go too crazy with their presentations. But yeah, that's the one device this year I think I'm looking the most forward to.
All right. Well, I'm glad you've managed your expectations. Take care, Scott. We'll see you soon.
You bet.
Jason is out tomorrow. I'll be joined by Georgia Dow from iMore. TNT records every day, Monday through Friday, live at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, which I believe is now midnight UTC. You can correct me if I'm wrong. That's twit.tv/live. That's where you can find us. You can be part of the show by emailing us at tnt@twit.tv, or you can leave a short voicemail like our viewer did today. That's 260-TNT-SHOW. Leave a voicemail. Tell us who you are if you want us to say your name on the show. You can also hit us up on Twitter. That's at Tech News Today TV. And you can subscribe to our show at twit.tv/TNT. And if you want to tweet at me, I'm at Megan Maroney. Thanks to our technical director, Brian. Thank you to Burke for helping out in the studio, giving me notes that you get to see on the Burke Cam. And thank you to Kevin for editing the show. And thanks to you for talking tech with us. I will see you tomorrow.